Welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the Alleghenies Ahead Podcast. I'm Ethan Imhoff, your host, and with me today is Dr. John Mills, president of Mount Aloysius College. Now, I should mention that Mount Aloysius College has agreed to host the podcast, so we're very excited to be here in this wonderful facility that they have that's going to be the setting for our next 12 episodes. So many thanks, Dr. Mills, and to the production crew here. We're really looking forward to this. So Alleghenies Ahead was a planning process that was conducted in 6 counties, Cambria County being one of those. And certainly our institutions of higher education play a very important role in planning, economic development, recreation, workforce development. And so we're going to talk a little bit about those topics today with Dr. Mills and some of the things that the college has going on that match up with a lot of the priorities and action items from the Alleghenies Ahead plan. So since this is a day of firsts and this is our first episode, I thought I'd kick things off by asking you, what are your first impressions when you came to Crescent and Mount Aloysius College? What were your impressions of Cambria County and the Southern Alleghenies region?
Well, I'd never been here to the Alleghenies before. I'd lived in the Northeast most of my life. I moved to Montana and then came here in early part of June of 2017. And being an outdoors person, being a person very much engaged with the environment, I was very, very impressed with the outdoor environment, the activities that you could partake in, and the sheer beauty of the mountain region. And when I came to take over the position in July, I started to explore the Allegheny region as much as possible, mainly as a fisherman, and was just very, very impressed with the untapped resources that are available for people who want to experience the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we were going through our planning process, recreation was one of the top 8 priorities that regionally was identified as something that was important and an action plan developed around that. You said untapped, and I think that's the key thing. There's folks here who feel like there's a lot of untapped potential. We have mountains, we have rivers, we have streams, and that we're just kind of starting to get this going. Talk a little bit about what you've done at the college to connect students with those recreational opportunities that are right here in our midst.
Well, the interesting thing was the college is sitting in a beautiful place and has a beautiful campus surrounded by the Allegheny Mountain Range and forest. But we weren't talking about it at all. If you looked at our website in July of 2017, they weren't mentioned. So the first thing we did was build up a recreational resource on our website so people could see what they could do. And then we just started trying to get activities going where students would try to embrace the outdoors. And it wasn't a tradition. There certainly were students on the campus who were into their family hunting, and people have their hunting camps and they have their fishing game clubs. But as an institution, we weren't using that resource and getting our students engaged with their environment. So we started some more activities. We've started some little silly things like full moon hikes. Sometimes we can't do them because the full moon isn't going to show, or it's
right.
minus 20. But we've started that and had some fun with that. We've done an introduction day for all the students who come in, brand new students, and to begin the semester in the fall, have an experiential day where they were exposed to stand-up paddleboarding, biking, hiking, and then, of course, we did tubing on the river. So just to let them know that these resources are out there. Mm-hmm. And when you hear the complaint, which is common in many rural schools, there's nothing to do here. Right. All you have to do is look outside, and if you want to put your boots on and get going, there's a lot of stuff to do, and that's what we're trying to promote.
Yeah, that's great, and I completely agree. There are, and we found this through the planning process, there were just so many opportunities and so many things going on. One thing we are trying to do through Cambria County right now is promote our bike trails, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Actually, just yesterday we published a map, a countywide map in Cambria County of bicycle and walking trails all throughout the county. So it's great to hear about your efforts and how we can plug into that. There's also a trail project here going on in Crescent that our organization, the Cambria County Planning Commission, was a part of about 2 years ago. We did a corridor plan along Old Route 22, and one of the priorities out of that plan was connecting the National Park site, which is not far from here, into the community. And not a lot of communities have a National Park Service site in their midst, and certainly trail access up there, recreational access up there. So we're working with the National Park Service and Federal Highway Administration right now to develop a trail that would connect the Park Service site, the railroad site, with the community, and it'd be a trail that anybody could use. There's goat paths up there now that you can, hike around in, but this would be a more formalized path that would be wide, that would be suitable for anybody to use. So it's good to hear about what you guys are doing here as well. Now, another priority in the plan is workforce development, and one of, when we went out into the communities and we talked about, or we asked the community members, we said to them, what do we need here? What needs to happen? And folks always say jobs, right? That's one of the first things you always hear. And we do need jobs. And as we got into this, we talked to business owners and folks in economic and workforce development. We said, what's the response here? And as we went on, we heard more and more that there are jobs here. We have jobs. We have employers and business owners who could hire 10, 20, 50, 100 people tomorrow if the skilled workforce was here. So then we got into this notion of, we have the jobs, but what's the workforce situation look like? And do the skills of the workforce match up with what the needs of the employers are here locally? So that's been kind of a conundrum that a lot of people are working to fix. But in our discussion the other day, you had mentioned a unique partnership that you have with Forest Hills High School to work with them on some workforce development issues and help get their students trained for opportunities that are available here. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this was a really quite a serendipitous event. I was talking with Ed Bowser, the superintendent there, who's now retired and moved on from that.
And Ed was a steering committee member on our comprehensive plan.
And this was last year. And I just happened to mention that in my discussions with people, because I'm very much into workforce development. I had been involved in the Adirondack Park for many years and had been appointed by Governor Pataki at that time as part of the Adirondack Economic Development Force that was up there. And I cared about it very much. And I was talking to him that I'd gone out into the community trying to find out what the needs were, and I kept hearing one refrain was we need baccalaureate engineering training, engineering technology. And my problem at the time, I just said to Ed, is, the Mount has an excellent facilities for healthcare, but we don't have the footprint to build an engineering tech space. We don't have the equipment. And of course, we don't have an engineering faculty. So the 3 strikes and you're out. And he said, well, wait a minute. I have the building, because they had just opened an STEM building. It turns out he had phenomenal faculty teaching at the high school level who really were college level faculty. And so he had the equipment in the building. And so we started talking about, we'll be able to work together to deliver an associate's degree in engineering tech right there in place with the students from that area. And we now have that program in place, and we'll be starting it next fall.
That's great.
And so a student can enter the program, and if they go full blast and of course succeed, they will be able to graduate from high school with an associate's degree in engineering technology. But even if they don't get the degree, they're going to get certain skills and abilities that will let them enter the workforce even without completing the degree.
Well, that's so important, just having those skills, even if they don't have a degree necessarily, if they have a skill set that can put them into one of numerous positions that are available in our area, that's meeting the need.
Right.
Yeah. So I know you also have a partnership with NPC
Yes.
down in Blair County, just down the mountain. So tell us a little bit about that partnership.
Well, that was also one of the things I feel very strongly about, and I've worked on this in my previous life as another college where I was president. I really felt that in order to meet these workforce needs, and yes, just like here in the Adirondacks, in the Northern Forest, as we called it, there was high unemployment and high job openings because the unemployed didn't match the skills that were in the jobs. And you have to train them, and in most cases, it's an expensive training. They have to pay college-level costs. And my argument was, we need to have skin in the game by everybody. So the institution, if they want to meet their community needs, has to put skin into the game, basically reducing their tuition to help. The companies that need the help have to do tuition supplement. They have to say, I'm willing to help pay for this. And then, of course, the student has to have skin in the game and help pay. So we were talking about it with a couple of companies, and one of them that stepped forward and said, we really want to try this was NPC, Mark Barnhart, the head of it. And Josh Barnhart, his son, has been a key component of that. And so we just started hammering out a curriculum where students can come right out of high school, and we're now recruiting those students, and they'll go onto the floor at NPC and work approximately 20 hours a week, and then they'll continue on at the Mount taking courses in an associate degree program that we have. And the plan is that they will be able to complete their associate degree in 3 years. Normal time is 2. But with the tuition supplements and what we're able to do with federal financial aid, a student will be able to finish the program essentially debt-free and very little cost to them. And they will be skilled and have jobs with NPC in a growth industry.
Right. Right. And we should mention NPC is a company that works with, it's a communications company that
Right.
does digital, electronic media, and also print media
Right.
too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So has that begun yet, or there?
We just finished the curriculum approval a week ago, and we have started recruiting the students. Our goal is to fill the class by the 15th of March.
Oh,
We'll see.
That's good. That's good. How did that connection form between the Mount and NPC?
Well, the connections with NPC, I have to give a shout out to Joe Adams from Bishop Guilfoyle because he caught my message on this workforce development idea. And although he's at Bishop Guilfoyle, which is predominantly a college prep school, he understood the problem that was being faced by many of the residents of Blair County, that there was other workforce needs and other paths to a good middle-class life than running away to college somewhere and paying high tuition. So he and I called a meeting, and he had a list of companies because he'd been here and he's from the area and knew people. And we brought in about 12 different companies and made the pitch. And MPC was the one that stepped forward and said, let's do it.
That's great. That's great. Are there other projects in the pipeline?
There's other companies that are interested.
Okay.
What they want to see is the proof of the concept.
Sure.
Make sure it works before they dive in. But we've been contacted by a couple of other firms in the area, from Tyrone all the way down to Johnstown.
Okay. And how are you reaching out to those and making those connections? Are you working through chambers of commerce?
A little bit,
economic
Chamber of
development,
Commerce, just force
organizations?
of trying to stick my nose in somewhere and talk to them.
Yeah, well, that's great. Tell me about, before we leave workforce development, what's your take on the not enough jobs versus workers, skilled and talented workers argument?
It clearly is a problem because I think within the K-12 system, there just hasn't been a focus on the fact that there are really good middle-class jobs that can be satisfied with less than a college degree. And the focus, and I went through this myself with my own children, the focus was, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And in reality, there's many opportunities out there to get good, meaningful jobs that lead to a very, very substantial income and family income levels, and they can lead in growth over time to maybe a college degree, but the opportunities are there. And I think philosophically, we as an educational group, parents, the state, the higher education groups, we all focused that college was the way to go. And you look at what Gates was doing. He was pushing that we had this 25% college graduation number by 2020. And he was putting millions of dollars into it. And no one was really looking back and saying, well, what are the other very good jobs that are out there that are meaningful, skilled jobs that are cognitive? They require you to think and to interact with people. All of those skills we talk about you have to get in a liberal arts education. Well, if you're going to be a foreman on the floor that's doing metal manufacturing, you've got to have those skills. And so that's, I think, what we fail to recognize, but I think there's a big turnaround right now, and people are really paying attention to that.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to shift to our number one priority that came up during the Alleghenies Ahead process was broadband and cell service. We live in a region that has, in some areas, very good broadband service, and in other areas, it's non-existent. And this, people think it's about watching Netflix and being able to order products on your phone, but it has a key economic development piece to it because broadband has become, much like electrification 100 years ago.
Right.
It's just thought of as key infrastructure now, and without it, it's tough to attract businesses. It's tough to have a talented and skilled workforce because people want to live in areas where this infrastructure is available. Does the broadband issue come up at the college much? I'm sure you're pretty well connected, but what happens when you step outside Mount Aloysius College?
Well, there are challenges, of course, with cell service and those other attributes. And we do have people, and we have students who are communities, and they go home and they have homework assignments, and they got their computer, they can't log on. So they're stranded, and it inhibits their own development. But I think the broadband issue is more than just, as you said, hooking up and watching something on TV or getting information. It is an economic driver. When I was in the Adirondacks, we focused entirely, the major theme for the Adirondacks was broadband for all. And we worked on that with the state, and the governors were very supportive of us. And we saw small communities really being able to attract people who could work from home, work in small groups, and they had a digital content which they could sell. And if they could get it out there, they could be in a beautiful place, make a very good living, not have to commute, lock their door, and just plug in and do their work. And that's what I think the advantage of broadband here would be. You'd be able to track a class of workers who are very high on the cognitive scale and then the creative scale, but don't want to be in downtown D.C. or Baltimore, and they can do their work far away and deliver a product without ever stepping outside their door.
Now, when you were in the Adirondacks, what was the vehicle for expanding broadband? Was it a co-op? Was it working with the private sector?
Yes.
How did that happen?
It was really driven by the governor. He started this Adirondack Economic Development Group and said, come up with what you need for this area. We brought in people I wasn't in charge of it, I was just a member of it, and we brought in people from all over the Adirondacks. We had long, hard discussions about what was needed, where it was needed, and then we started asking for support from the people who were going to run the wire. They couldn't charge the same amount as they would if they were running the cable in downtown Albany. They had to realize they had to put skin in the game. The state put skin in the game. The towns put skin in the game. And we hung the fiber, and then we did the last mile. It took several years, but it's still going on. Not every community is 100%, but it was a coalition of people who came together and said, we have to have this, from the politicians to the businesses to just the local people.
Right. Yeah, and for our listeners, this issue of broadband being the number one priority in this plan, there's a broadband task force is formed here region-wide that involves the 6 counties, and that group is working towards expanding those last mile opportunities, covering the areas that don't currently have service. But it seems like the first task is identifying the areas that don't have service, because a lot of times we don't have a concrete picture, a concrete visual of what what our areas that are underserved areas are. So they're digging into that and trying to get that information, and then using that information to prioritize the underserved areas. Because obviously we can't extend broadband everywhere, but you want to make sure the areas that are close to areas of higher education or your urban areas or areas with important businesses are well connected. Mm-hmm. So we're working on that here locally. The issue I guess I'd like to close with is transportation. When we did the corridor plan on the old highway a couple years ago, one of the primary reasons we chose Crescent was because it was along Route 22, has great access to Route 22, and also the old highway. So Mount Aloysius seems to be fairly well connected, but we hear from folks in the region that we need better transportation infrastructure, specifically a connection. Some folks would like to see a connection up to I-80, would like to see 219 extended, and then certainly there's the missing piece between the Turnpike, or I'm sorry, not the Turnpike, but I-68 and 219. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that?
Well, I have to say, being new here, just one of the ones that drove me crazy was the 99 lack of connection at the two ends. When you think about what you have to go through to get on 80 or to get on the Turnpike, mm-hmm. You've got this beautiful road running north and south, and then you end up doing loop-de-loops through towns just to go one more mile.
Right.
I don't know whoever thought of that connection, who was making the planner behind that, but I was astounded the first time I came here. But ease of moving around is critical. Mm-hmm. And I do think if the roads and the connections are in good shape and they are maintained, mm-hmm. Just like in Montana where I live now, people don't think so much about the distance, it's the convenience. Mm-hmm. But if you're having to stop and pull off and change roads, and that slows down commerce and it slows down people moving around. Mm-hmm. So I think ease of transportation is absolutely required, especially in a rural area. If you've got to go through hoops to go 20 miles, you don't do it. Mm-hmm.
Does the college provide transportation to students
we don't really
live on campus at all?
We do buses now. We got buses that go to Altoona on Sunday to shop. And we do other special trips, like last Saturday. We had a fan bus to go to the basketball game in Pittsburgh. But that's about it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, half of our students commute, so they have their vehicles, and most of the students on campus have vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your time, mm-hmm. and keep up the good work in recreation, workforce development, and everything else that you're doing. And for our listeners, the next episode will be focusing on recreation. So we're going to talk to some of our project managers and stakeholders in recreation and some folks that have some really cool things going on throughout the region to help everybody know what's going on with recreation and provide opportunities to improve our quality of life and keep folks here. So again, appreciate the time.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the good work.